Joining me now, contributor with Washington Examiner, Gianno Caldwell, and president of the National Action Network in San Diego, the Reverend Shane Harris. Shane, Gianno, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to see you, gentlemen. All right, you heard the woman. You heard Rachel Dolezal. She says she's transracial now. Gianno, let me pivot to you. Is that a thing?
No, I don't think it's a thing. And I tell you, this ideology is the same ideology used by the left to say, just because I feel I was born a certain way, therefore I am. I think this is counterintuitive, and I think it's also insulting to say that her being a white woman who grew up a white woman who was clearly identified as a white woman, if you looked at the pictures up into fairly recently, is insulting to an entire race of people, the African American community, who suffered through Jim Crow, institutional racism, which still exists, among a number of other things that disenfranchise and marginalize African Americans.
And Shane, let me turn to you with the same question. Transracial, that idea. I mean, we haven't heard that word too much recently in our political culture. Is that a thing?
I do believe that on the issue of the social construct that she's speaking of, I do believe in that, based on the Bible, that we're all, one blood, that we are all under that same banner. But I think that it doesn't apply to her. I think in the way that it doesn't apply to her is her history. When you look at her history, she completely did not tell the truth about where she came from. She completely was dishonest. And I think that it does not apply to her because of her dishonesty. But I do think that race is a social construct that we should have the ability. And we also got to remind ourselves that black, when she says black, she's not saying African American. When she says black, that she consider herself black. Black is a culture. African American is a race. We have to define this clearly and be able to look at it from both sides.
Right, and you're right. She did distinguish between saying she was African American versus black, but you bring up two things. Let me bring them both up. The first is I want to just make sure that I'm very clear on this. If someone, regardless of the race that they were born, if this white woman says that she feels trapped in a white woman's body, that she feels black, I mean, is that transracial? Is that a thing? Is she socially allowed, if you will, to identify as a black person?
Yes, again, I don't think this applies to her because of her dishonesty. Years ago, her lawsuit against Harvard, all these kind of things play into this. Howard University, years ago when she filed on this same kind of issue against Howard. So all this plays into her history. I'm not saying that it applies to her, but I'm saying it does apply to those who would be honest.
If she wasn't dishonest, oh, wow. Okay, so you're saying that race is a social construct, which I disagree.
Yes.
I think that race is simply what it is. I think what people allow the divisions to be a social construct, meaning I'm white, you're black, I'm better than, that is the social construct in which I see. I find it very interesting that you are saying that a person could actually be transracial. That sounds really interesting to me.
I do believe,
especially considering the fact that this same argument the LGBT community used when they said that their fight is the same fight for civil rights that African Americans experienced, those who were hang on trees and crosses and who were beaten by the Klan.
Right.
I'm shocked that you're defending this.
Well, Gianno, I totally agree with what you're saying. That is a very challenging conversation when they're saying that it's the same struggle of civil rights, because it is a totally different angle of I would say it is an angle of civil rights, but it's a different angle. But going back to this, as we're dealing with Rachel, I'm saying that for her, it does not apply to her. But I think it should apply, and it does apply to people who are honest and true about where they're coming from.
Reverend Shane, let me interrupt just for a second, because I want to make sure that I'm clear on what you're saying. So you're saying that being transracial, if I as a white person decided that I identify as a black person and not a white person, that's okay, that's transracial. But you say for Rachel Dolezal, it doesn't count. Who makes that judgment? I mean, isn't that one of the arguments from the left when it comes to something like transgender issues, that they say no one else can tell me what I am? I'm the only one that chooses my identity. So in this case, what gives you the right? What gives anyone the right to tell Rachel Dolezal whether or not she is how she identifies?
Because when you're saying race is a social construct, what you're dealing with is you're dealing with an acceptance of what you want to be. She accepted what she wanted to be, but you're also dealing with an acceptance of where you come from. She did not accept where she came from. She came into this, stepped into this, said, I'm black, never told the truth to the NAACP, never told the truth to anybody historically, and then had the nerve to come off and be this way. So we're saying it does not apply to someone who is willing to lie about and be non-credible.
So
in their history.
it's the lying. Gianno, let me turn to you then. Because
so let me ask you this question, Reverend Shane. I'm really intrigued by this point. You're a reverend.
Mm-hmm.
We believe that God created us who we are supposed to be. So you're saying in this case, then God, if let's say she hadn't lied about it, God made a mistake then.
No, because you're dealing with culture versus race. Race is dealing with a history of being born a certain way. Culture is dealing with what you want to be, the traits you like, the music you like, what you like to be involved in. When she said she was black, that was dealing with race.
Race is a part of our identity. That's clearly who we are. That's a part of it.
Exactly.
When you talk about the culture, meaning I can be an African American who grew up in the suburbs and identify more with the white culture versus somebody who grew up in the inner city. That's the culture piece. But at the end of the day, I'm still an African American.
So what's different?
That's how I was born.
So then, Gianno, let me ask you, what's different?
God gave me that.
What's
so I don't
different from
understand.
her doing that right here? What's different from her saying, I want to be black, I want to be a part of the culture, I want to be a part of the culture of blackness? What's wrong with her doing that? What's the difference?
The difference is just how you propose the question. What's wrong with her saying, I want to be black, I want to be a part of the culture? If she's saying, look, I am not black, accepting who she is already, and saying, look, I want to assimilate more with that culture, I think that would be an acceptable standard. But that's clearly not the case today.
And that's why I said, and now you're making my point a yes. That's why I said that her not accepting
that still doesn't
her history,
change.
Her not being real about who she was from the start made this more difficult.
Assimilating and changing your race is two different things. To assimilate means to say, look, I'm going to do things like black folks do. I may speak the way, if there's a certain way a black person speaks, I'm going to do some of those certain things. That's okay.
But black is a culture.
That my identity
Blackness
is
a
changed,
culture.
I cannot change.
Blackness is a culture. It's not a race.
I'm a man, born a man. I can't change to a dog because I think I want to be a dog. I can't change to a frog because I think I want to be a frog.
But you can change to dog traits. You can change the dog traits if you want to.
This is where the dishonesty comes from, and it all comes from the left. This idea that you don't need God in your life. You can be who you want to be.
No, actually, it's more godly. Because
all right,
if you look at the Bible, it says that we're all equal under one banner.
Guys, let me interrupt for 1 second. Let me interrupt for 1 second because the sticking point that I have, the sticking point that I have with this argument is still the idea that someone else could tell you whether or not you're being honest. Someone else, liberals, like you're saying, Reverend Shane, could tell this woman that she's not qualified to be transracial because they don't believe her intentions. To be honest, to be frank here, you can't have it both ways. Either you use identity as your single qualifier for how someone identifies, or you don't. You can't have someone else that says it's okay.
But Liz, what I'm dealing with is I'm dealing with the point and the fact that she is assimilating to a culture and the identification that you're talking about the liberals.
She's saying
liberals
that she
are
was
disagreeing.
born that way.
This is not about a liberal thing. This is about blacks like me who have the right to say, this woman did not come out and be honest with who she was. Therefore, it does not apply to her. But it does apply to someone else who's true and honest about where they come from and what they want to assimilate into. Therefore, if somebody's honest, they should be able to assimilate into what they want or what they want to be a part of.
All right, Gianno, last question. We're out of time here. Last question. Gianno, should there be a character test for your identity, for your race?
Absolutely. The character test is God created me who I am, period.
Period. There we go.
And
Gentlemen.
God created us all equal.
Gentlemen,
period.
We're out of time. I appreciate you being here. It was a great conversation. All right, guys.